And we're live.
All right, good morning, everyone. So we're going to do a little update for you on what is now a hurricane moving into the Gulf waters. Michael really rapidly intensified in a strange sort of way in an area of the Caribbean that was not particularly conducive for development, but nevertheless, the eye reformed over the center of a mass of clouds and convection, and that has certainly aided it, I think, in continuing to develop. It's now moving into an area in the Gulf where it will be in favorable conditions for rapid intensification, and the Hurricane Center is now forecasting rapid intensification to a major Category 3 storm before making landfall. That is a significant change over the last 24 hours. The track of the storm kind of remains the same, 75-mile-an-hour winds right now, but a forecast track that carries it into the Gulf with a Category 3 status before making landfall up around the Big Bend region of Florida, or perhaps back toward the Panhandle. So Panama City is certainly on guard right now, as is really every place in North Florida. For us, the nearest pass will probably be 200 to 250 miles out to the Gulf waters. But you know, anywhere in this red cone here, there is a 2 out of 3 chance that the hurricane will accurately track within that cone. But there's also about a 30% chance that it may not. And so we'll watch that very carefully. Any deviation to the east of that cone, of course, could be significant difference in the impact of the storm on us. But assuming that it tracks within the cone, the effects for us will probably be much gustier winds as we head into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon. We could probably see some gusts along the coast of tropical storm force, perhaps. There's about a 30 to 40% chance of that, especially in Manatee County. And there's also the possibility of some sustained winds that will be less than that at about 20 miles per hour, with gusts as high as 30. But certainly the stronger this storm does become, and intensity forecasting is still a little bit iffy, but if it does become a strong storm like a Category 3, then our chances of seeing tropical storm force winds in our area are higher, along the coastline particularly. Inland, I don't think it's as much as a worry. That is one issue. The second issue, of course, is small craft advisories, rip currents, and high surf advisories. Water sports, water activities obviously are out of the question for the next couple of days. The swells will propagate far outward from the center of the storm, so we are very likely to experience some rough conditions on our area waters. Coastal erosion, also a problem, especially if it becomes a Category 3. The good news is it's kind of a fast-moving storm, but if it does slow down, and there's some variations in model speeds with this storm, the European model takes it at a much slower rate as it lifts it northward. So if that were the case, if it did move slower, we'd have a bigger chance of seeing some more significant coastal erosion. The other issue, of course, is the rainfall, and as it moves to the north, it is quite likely we could see some rain. Now, this map shows you the probabilities of hurricane force winds. Obviously, in our area, we stay out of the hurricane force winds, according to this recent model run. Tropical storm force winds, different matter. If we put this into motion, you'll notice that as we head into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, we're in an area that does give us about a 30 to 40% chance of seeing some of those tropical storm force, minimal tropical storm force winds along our coastline. This is not for strong tropical storm force. This is for minimal tropical storm, this particular graph. But still, that could certainly bring down some trees, especially if the rains are heavy, and there is that possibility, which could lead to some sporadic power outages. And we could have the potential of some severe weather. You can't completely rule out tornadoes, though tornadoes are not forecast. The bigger chance of that up in the northern part of the state, but still can't rule it out, so we'll be watching for that as well. Tropical storm watch up for our area waters from Inglewood northward, including Tampa Bay, as well as a storm surge watch as those waves propagate outward from the center of the storm. Even though it's 250 miles out in the Gulf, we still have the potential of seeing a sea level rise, so that our time of high tides will be a foot to maybe 2 feet or more higher than average. So we'll particularly be watching that high tide that comes our way on Wednesday at about 1:30 or 1:40. We may see these watches or warnings change with time. The watches may become warnings. Bands of moisture, of course, riding around the circulation of Michael will also bring us good chances of seeing some rainfall, some of it heavy at times, possibly, especially Tuesday night into Wednesday day. At that point, we could see accumulations of another 3 inches of rainfall. If that comes in a short period of time, Obviously, that would be a problem with some localized roadway flooding and such. And maybe down the road, if we got higher amounts, it could lead to some river flooding. We've just gotten over the Myakka River flooding, and now we can see perhaps another 3 inches, 4 inches of rain in a short period of time. So that's something we'll be watching. This is a Futurecast RPM computer model that we run here at the station. Put it into motion. You can watch the eye of the storm moving upwards through the Gulf off the coast of our area, but still the rain bands pushing onshore. And these are the kind of things that could spawn isolated tornadoes. So we'll be watching for that as well. Those are the major threats: sporadic power outages, higher than normal surf, beach erosion, wave action, creating potential dangers for water sports, obviously staying indoors. This is not going to be a terribly large windstorm for us. Inland areas at the present time, there's really not a particular need to shutter unless you want to be extra careful. Otherwise, we'll just wait and see how strong this storm gets and what its forward speed becomes. We want it to move quickly and not slowly. So that's pretty much a wrap up, but we've got some questions. Sure.
Yeah. One, of course, red tide.
Yes.
Is this going to affect red tide? Will it affect the bloom? Will it help red tide, hurt red tide?
Well, there's some anecdotal evidence that storms can help disperse red tide by the choppy action of the waters. I say that as anecdotal because there has never been a documented case in history where a tropical storm or hurricane removed red tide from the waters. So in this particular instance, it'll be kind of a wait and see. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of the winds with this will be onshore or from the south. So it's not a situation where it pushes red tide out to sea, but in fact, it could actually push the waters closer to shore. So the short answer to that is, I don't know. We'll wait and see how it plays out. But there's no scientific evidence that show that would be the case.
Another question that isn't Michael related. They just want to know if it's going to start getting colder soon.
There's a cold front, actually, that's going to steer this system rapidly out toward the Carolinas and then push it out into the Atlantic. That frontal boundary may actually work its way through here and stall to our south. So it may be our first cold front that makes it through. And while it won't be a wicked blast of Arctic winter, it will perhaps lower our temperature a few degrees.
And a few people missed the start of the video. They're wondering if Michael could track east. And another person asked if it does track east, what would be the difference in wind and rain?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. How far east is the million-dollar question? With this computer model that they run at the Hurricane Center, and it's usually pretty accurate, within this red cone here, there is a 60 to 70% chance that the storm will fall within this cone at this point in time. As it moves northward, the cone becomes larger, of course, because the error becomes greater. But at the present time, and the computer models are all in pretty good agreement that this is the track it'll take. The Hurricane Center has kind of pushed the center track, the best track we call it, of the hurricane a little bit further to the east than some of the computer models suggest, which would push it a little bit further to the west. The further west this storm got, the better it would be for us. I think what the viewer might, or the listener might have been asking there is, what are the chances of this making a right turn and heading right for us? That's a very low chance. That is not going to happen. But there is a possibility that it could get closer toward the Big Bend region than, say, the extreme western part of the Panhandle. If it got closer to the Big Bend region, then the impact for us would be a greater possibility of those low-end tropical storm force winds, a little bit greater possibility of some beach erosion, and a better possibility of some sporadic power outages.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Sure. See you later.